When my friend, the Reverend Tracy Blackman, says, "Susan, I feel you," I know she gets it. She gets me. She understands that in my pain and my doubt, in my grief and in yours, I want to be a good person, a better person each day. In our personal grief and in the collective, the grief we all feel in this post-9/11 world, a world of pandemic and politics that cause so much pain. Resistance is felt in showing up and in acts of loving kindness. I feel you, my dear friends. I feel you, family. I feel you, beloved community. I feel you as we try so hard to hold on to what is dear and at the same time be able to accept the change that comes with living. The one thing we can count on is the inevitable change that comes with time passing. I feel you as these days of awe dare us to still believe that we can tip the scales of righteousness over injustice, of truth over illusion and disinformation and big lies, of love over those who hate us without even knowing us. On this night of all nights, we should be together to renew our resolve to tip the scales for good in this new year. On this night of all nights, we are meant to feel the compassion of our collective community as we see familiar faces and welcome new ones with radical hospitality into our Sukkot Shalom, our shelter of peace. On this night of all nights, we need to feel each other's presence, to have the strength and the courage to seek forgiveness for our own sins as well as take on the sins of all humanity. On this night of all nights, our sanctuaries are meant to be full with those of us who feel the call of tradition, the connection to community, and the promise that this spiritual practice will deliver us into a better year. When I decided that this would be my last high holy days to stand before you, I imagined telling this to you on this night of all nights when I could see your faces. Though we've been in so many locations over these 37 years, there are those of you I have come to count on being here on Kol Nidre. I miss you on this night of all nights. I'm not retiring. I still have a lot to do. I'm not even becoming emeritus quite yet, but I am going to begin over these next few months to shift in my responsibilities. Like so many of my baby boomer generation, I feel that it's time to make more space for the next generations and to use what I have learned to carve out a new chapter. To be clear, I'm not retiring quite yet. I'm still here for life cycle events and an occasional class or service. Jim and I have loved collaborating on the Psalms and other projects, and we hope to offer more to this community that has quite remarkably grown online and in person through this pandemic. I am shifting in my responsibilities, but I'll say it again, I'm not yet retiring, and as I deliver this, my last Kol Nidre message, I find myself remembering my very first one. In my third and fourth years of the 5-year rabbinical school program that Jim and I went through together, I had the privilege of serving Temple B'nai Israel of Jackson, Tennessee. It was 1979, and they did not want a woman. In fact, a few years before, they were supposed to get the very first woman rabbi. Rabbi Sally Presand was supposed to be their student rabbi, but they sent a message back to the college and they said, "We'd rather have no one than that woman." That year, the seminary sent a man. And when they tried the same shenanigans with me, the school said, "Take her or you won't get anyone." I went, bracing for a disaster. But that wonderful congregation took me into their homes and their hearts, and they became wonderful teachers and friends, even until today. But for that first high holidays over 40 years ago, I was prepared for Rosh Hashanah, but I can admit it now, I did not have a sermon for Kol Nidre. I had no thoughtful reflection to honor this community that had been gathering since the 1850s to be a Jewish presence for so many who were the only Jews in their small Tennessee towns. And I went to sleep the night before thinking that for the first time in 130 years, this congregation would have a rabbi who would have nothing to say for Yom Kippur. And that night, I dreamt a new version of an old Hasidic tale. The old Hasidic tale tells the story of the Baal Shem Tov. When the rabbi saw misfortune threatening the Jews, he would go to a secret place in the forest, light a fire, and say a special prayer, and the crisis would be averted. Subsequent rabbis confronted similar crises in the same way, but one forgot the prayer, another forgot how to light the fire, another forgot the location of the secret place in the forest. The rabbis did what they could remember, and the misfortunes were overcome. But finally, a terrible crisis came to a rabbi many, many generations later. He sat with his head in his hands and lamented, "I am unable to light the fire. I don't know the prayer. I can't even find my way to the place in the forest. All I can do is tell the story, and this must be sufficient." The Hasidic tale claims that telling the story was enough. But not in my dream. In my dream, the story grew feet, and we found our way back to the secret place in the forest. We lit the fires that helped others find us there. Fires of light and inspiration, fires of passion and purpose. We remembered the prayers, not rote prayers, but prayers of longing and desire that we dared to name. Prayers for healing that would keep our hearts open in the most hopeless of times, and prayers that we would sing and swing, prayers we could dance to. We made sure that there was room for everyone and that everyone felt welcome and respected. Every child saw others who looked like them, and the elders saw every child as their own. Misfortunes came, but the loving arms of the community carried us through the valleys of the shadows, and we learned to sit with our sadness and make space for simcha, for joy. And the stories, they told themselves as we cycled through the holy days and we felt how each one was connected to the next. And from New Year to New Year, we found we would never be in the same place. For our stories would grow and we would be better and kinder and more compassionate and forgiving each year. In my dream, it was not enough to tell the story. We became the story. Our souls were on fire, and our practice had purpose and passion. We dared to believe that our prayers had the power to protect and provide a path to healing, if not always for the body, surely for the spirit. And that was my message to the dear people of Jackson, Tennessee, 44 years ago, that it was no longer enough to tell the stories. We had to find our way back to the secret place in the forest and light the fires of faith and offer the prayers that would get us up out of our seats to sing and dance and resist despair and be held by our tradition and never be afraid to reinvent ourselves again and again with something new and be ready for the next big thing. For we are a people that have had many secret places, many prayers, poetry, song, and different ways to dance, and more stories than stars in the heavens. And I am so grateful for the almost 40 years that I have been part of this story. with you. And I'm not done. I have some things that I still want to do. I want to work with Maxine and Charlene and the teachers at our early childhood center, the Nest, who are building a feminist curriculum with the principles of critical race theory guiding us. If we are going to change the world, it will be through the children who know better. Our children who know in their DNA that racism is wrong and that to change it, we need to be able to see and change the structures and institutions that keep racism alive at all costs. I'll also be working with the Ashrei Foundation, CRC's new nonprofit for social justice. Many of you know that Sue McCollum and her sons, Michael and Brian Epstein, gave us a very generous gift and a huge challenge to create a nonprofit to deepen our social justice work at CRC. We are calling it the Ashrei Foundation, named for the first word of the first psalm. It's usually translated as happy, Ashrei Ha'ish. Happy is the person, but no, another meaning for Ashrei is forward. Our work will be to engage our talented members and community, to alleviate suffering, and, like so many of the urban churches we work with, to use our nonprofit to sit at interfaith and community justice tables to be able to receive funding and support that are not always open to religious institutions. Ashrei will allow us to expand our reach beyond the Jewish and the religious communities to do the work of tikkun, the work of repair, that we are called to do by our very core values. We are calling it Ashrei, forward, because this is our hope, to keep moving forward, building bridges with our relationships and our resources across all the divides and divisions that are destroying our dreams. With the trust in the relationships that we have established over these years together and the friendships we have formed, we have an opportunity at this moment to stir up some good trouble. And Ashrei will also help us have the structure to listen, because it's time to listen to other people's hurts. It's time for more understanding. It's time to grow the community of people who listen to each other's heartaches and heart hopes and find ways to help each other as we struggle with this pandemic and other challenges to living that are with us every day. I know that there are people on the extremes who will never listen, who are dangerous fanatics. But I also know that there are many more in the middle who have their own stories, their own reasons for thinking and acting as they do. And when we listen to each other, we do find that we are willing to make room for the common good and put self-interest aside to be part of something that is higher and holier. It's time for modeling cooperation over competition for our children. In this post-9/11 world, children, and are now our pandemic children, have grown up in a world that desperately needs us to turn grief and loss and fear for their very lives into courageous and thoughtful conversations that will build bridges. They need us to stop making excuses for inexcusable acts of terror toward each other and our planet, and understand that we have the tools to lead to creative solutions that lessen the violence and grow the middle and tip the scales toward reconciliation. It's time to make room for the kind of truth that leads to reconciliation to save their future. So I may be shifting in my responsibilities like so many of my generation. And yes, life is change. Sometimes life brings the most awful of change, the kind of change that changes us, makes it hard for us to live every day. But I am not, and we are not, done yet. And on this Kol Nidre, when we are called to take our vows seriously, On this Kol Nidre, as we prepare to hear our own Hava Polinsky play this melody to open us up to Yom Kippur, our day of soul-searching, reflection, and yearning for meaning, I pray that we let this Kol Nidre prayer and service give us the next 24 hours to disconnect from the world around us so that when we return, it will be with souls renewed and revived and with every sense so awakened that the whole world looks transformed, looks possible, looks like we can take it on and make a difference. So settle in. In a few moments, Chava will take us on a journey through the Kol Nidre prayer. Her playing this ancient melody will lift us up out of the ordinary and remind us that we humans have the capacity to take the ordinary and raise it up to the level of the sacred. And here is my Kol Nidre vow to our children and grandchildren. I feel you. I feel your fear for your future, for the future of our nation, our world, and our planet. And I vow, for as long as I'm able, I will be here to remind you that we can still redeem the future, your future. I vow that I will help you remember that within you is the wisdom to do the right thing and to value and build conscious and compassionate community around you, because we know that we can readjust to a more just world that may have less stuff, but will have more soul. A world where science will save us and learning will help us live together. And love will guide us to do the right thing as we figure out what comes next, a day at a time. I vow that we will be there for you, not giving up, continuing to work for the common good, and believing that in spite of everything, the good in us will win. And remember, we are a people who jump in and participate in writing our stories. We are not spectators, and that the truths that you seek to guide you to be on the right side of history, on the right side of the story, are within you, planted deep within, and no one can take them from you. Take this vow with me, dear friends, beloved community, from this Yom Kippur to the next, that we will do our best to find our way back to the secret places of our longing, of our believing, like the Baal Shem Tov did, that we have the power to avert disaster, that we can save the future. Promise me that with or without me, you will still dare to light the fires of light and inspiration, of passion and purpose, and that our prayers of longing and desire will have such power that many will gather with us to sing and dance and defy the darkness. And as we grow, the good, that we will continue to grow, that we will continue to tell the sacred story of this congregation as we grow and change and have the courage and creativity to transform again and again, that we may ever be a blessing for our children and our grandchildren for many generations to come.